Hi everybody, welcome to Fireside Chats here at Solid Conference. I am Kate Drane from Indiegogo, and I'm so happy to be here with Ben Einstein from Bolt. Hi Ben.
Hey y'all, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Excellent.
Are you excited to impart some knowledge on these great people?
Sure, I know so many of them already, so they already are very knowledgeable.
Well, I'm sure that you have a lot to still teach.
I will see.
So for those of you who don't know, Ben is the founder and how would you describe your role at Bolt?
Partner, yeah, we're just a general, we're a venture capital firm, and so general partner is sort of like the standard term used for like people that kind of control the organization of a firm. Yeah, so I'm one of the principal investors at Bolt.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you work with a lot of hardware companies, you work with a lot of entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Can you share your entrepreneurial journey with our fine crowd here?
Sure.
What led you to become an entrepreneur?
I've always been like a hacker, tinkerer, kind of like hardware person. My dad used to be like super oriented towards like do-it-yourself fixing shit, and whenever something would break like at home, he would be like, oh, instead of like having the Sears guy come to fix the washing machine, my 10-year-old son will do it for free, so I'm gonna save some money and have him do it. And so you just kind of get into this philosophy of like always changing things on your own. And so it's sort of an affliction. You know, hardware is definitely not an easy path, and so I've just always been oriented towards stuff like that, whether it's Legos or appliances or like model aircraft or, you know, tinkering with cars, whatever. It's all sort of the same DNA.
But you took a path that is more about empowering entrepreneurs as opposed to tinkering. Did you have hardware in your background?
Totally selfish, totally selfish. So it's sort of funny. I can't work on one thing for too long. I get really bored. And so I can work on something for like a year and a half, and then I want to like move on to the next thing. So the first thing I did when I graduated from school is I started a product design consultancy. So you probably know like IDEO or Continuum or Frog or Smart Design. There's like hundreds of these companies. So I ran one of those, which was really successful for a while. But it's a service business, right? You are basically selling your time to big companies for doing new product development for them. And I really, the third or fourth time you see like this idea you sold to someone for $150 an hour become millions of units being made, you're sort of like, shit. And so I Bolt sort of came out of a product design sort of consultancy role where we really wanted to work with more early stage companies and be incentivized with equity over the long term.
So then how did you meet your co-founders?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I have two founders. One is Scott Miller, who runs a company called Drane Innovation. Probably many of you guys know. And they help tons of hardware startups and Indiegogo crowdfunded companies do their first production runs in usually Asia. And I met him through the CEO of Robotics, Paul Barbarian. And then I met my other founder, Axel, through SolidWorks. You may know SolidWorks. And he was the lead investor in SolidWorks, and I've been very close with John Hirschtick, the founder of SolidWorks, and we sort of got connected that way. Axel had been a VC at a firm called Atlas Venture, which is one of the big firms in Boston, doing tons of hardware deals and CAD deals and things related to hardware.
And so when you guys started out, a lot of it was somewhat accelerator-y when you started, correct?
Yeah, I mean, we never really thought about it as like an accelerator or a program or an incubator or whatever. It was always like, what's the best possible way to help young hardware companies? And so I still, even though like my technical job is to like invest in companies, I don't think about it that way. I never have, and I hope I never will. It's really about what are the things that hardware companies need to get off the ground. And one of those things happens to be money, which is good, but there's a lot of other stuff that they need too. They really need support with engineering and design. They have trouble with prototyping facilities, and moving quickly and scaling is really hard. They have tons of issues with retail, going to Target and Best Buy and Apple Store and all this stuff, and they get really stuck with like learning how to go through that process. And a bunch of other stuff in between. But those are sort of a lot of the big pieces that we sort of set out to solve. And yeah, in the beginning we were doing more sort of like we do a lot of companies at once, and now we found it much more effective. That hardware is very individualized, and so we do one company at a time, about one per month or so.
Okay.
Yeah.
One thing that you guys do super duper well, and that it seems to be at the core of what you guys are about is really empowering others and educating others. So you have a really great blog that's filled with great content.
Yeah.
What inspired you, one, to create that? Have that as such a core part of your business?
It's super simple. Again, like, I am not a marketing person, as you can clearly tell. I don't think about it.
You're marketing every
well, it's actually laziness. I can just get to wear the same shirt every day, so I don't have to think about it. It's people keep asking the same questions over and over and over again. You know, you hear the number of times I've heard, like, hardware is hard, like, what does that mean? Like, how much does this cost? How do I do this thing? And so I think the best philosophy for blog content is like, wow, I have this conversation 20 times a week. Why don't I just have this conversation with myself and a keyboard, and then it'll be useful for more people. And I think, I don't know, it seems to be working. I can't really tell, but people seem to say good things, so that's good.
What would you say, like, from the feedback that you've gotten about it, which I would imagine you do have feedback, is what would, if you were to give this advice to an aspiring hardwarean, what would be one, either a resource that you would send them to beside yourself, or a piece of advice that you would give to an aspiring hardwarean?
Yeah, I think the single best thing you can do is talk to people who have done it before. And this is true for everything. It's true for manufacturing. It's true for understanding how to price. It's true for supply chain management. It's true for retail and distribution. It's true for returns and reverse logistics. Going through it for the first time for even really smart people is really hard. And so once you've talked to people that have gone through it 10, 20, 30 times, it's actually not that hard. You know, a lot of these big companies don't struggle with things like manufacturing or logistics or supply chain management. They've gotten that really systematized. And so I think sort of standing on the shoulders of people that have done it before can be really helpful when you're trying to do it for the first time. So I think that's sort of like my best, like, general piece of knowledge.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
And you guys just had some pretty huge news of partnering with Y Combinator. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been cool.
Can you tell us a little bit about how that, so just to give a little background on that, it was also, one, expanding your fund, and two, being able to expand from just outside of Boston to now Boston and San Francisco.
Yeah, so it's all these things kind of happened at once. So yeah, the fund is probably the most important. So we started with a really small fund. We used to write really tiny checks, you know, $50,000 or $100,000. And a lot of our companies would come back to us after, you know, they're starting to raise their, you know, first sort of institutional financing, and say, man, we really use more money, and we really like having you guys involved. We keep asking you questions, and it's only fair that you participate in our financing. But we didn't really have, it wasn't designed. We didn't have enough money to do that. So the second fund, which is about $35 million, is still really small in the venture world, but it's designed to be able to help the companies more. That happened, and then we opened an office in San Francisco on the pier on the Embarcadero, which is amazingly beautiful.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so we're really lucky there. $20 million prototyping facility and all this awesome stuff. And then the Y Combinator thing sort of came out of the blue. They have you know, everybody probably knows Y Combinator. They do you know, about 120 companies every 3 months for their cohorts, and an increasing number of hardware companies are going through, and their hardware companies are really struggling because the rules that the software world applies to startups are very different than the rules that hardware companies need. And so they sort of asked us to get involved and kind of help work through some of the higher sort of level things about strategic sort of process planning and development for hardware. And I mean, it's still pretty young. We've been doing it for maybe, I don't know, 4 months now or 5 months, but it's been going great.
Nice.
Yeah.
So then do you have to travel back and forth a lot? I bet you get a lot of frequent flyer miles.
I'm here every other week.
Wow.
So yeah, because we have 2 offices in Boston, offices in San Francisco. But I don't know, it's great. I think flying is amazing, so I'm happy to do it more.
That's cool. And also, just for my last question before I open it up to a question from the audience is, as an investor, what are things that you look for in your investments that are most important?
Yeah, I think, so hardware is a super strategic discipline. I think the idea of, you know, the sort of like lean mentality where you just like push something out and then like change it, that's really challenging. Some companies can do that okay in hardware, but so we really look for companies that are thinking really long-term about their strategy, not just tactics of how to sort of maneuver. The team is so important. Any investor will tell you that the team is the most important thing, and that's true for us.
What does that mean?
I mean, whether you like it or not, you know, venture capital is really built on the fact that you need a small number of large, successful companies, and so you have to basically be able to believe that the company that you're investing in at the little tiny, seed stage that we invest at can become a big, giant, multi-$100 million revenue business in some number of years. That's not too many. And that's it's a very difficult judgment call to make. So there's no like right or wrong answer. It's kind of like, can you make the assessment that that person is going to be able to build a multi-$100 million company? It's still early. We haven't done that yet, but we feel pretty good about it so far.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So we have time for one question. Ooh, this is a good audience. Anybody who wants to be our one question? Who's our brave soul?
Come on. Yeah.
How much of your business is consumer versus consumer product versus B2B?
Sure.
And are most of the guys coming in looking to build a consumer brand?
Yeah.
And then of that, I guess the second part of that would be tell me about the go-to-market. How do you guys help there?
Sure.
Or are you really more focused on the hardware side?
Yeah, so there were really two questions there. One was really about the ratio of B2B and consumer. I don't know, again, this is more of my like sort of makeup as a person. I just like love these like unsexy, gross businesses that are really interesting from a sort of like engineering perspective. And so I think a lot of the growth in the sort of like hardware, connected hardware ecosystem, whatever buzzword you want to use to describe it, is going to come from industrial, heavy-duty, nasty things. And so we see, while probably the companies that we see are maybe 3-to-1 or 4-to-1 consumer to enterprise, just because there's fewer people thinking about those problems, the number of companies that we invest in are it's about equal between the two. So I don't know if that answers your question on that one. The other one was about go-to-market and sort of how do we help companies go to market on the consumer side. It's tough. Building a consumer hardware company is actually not really about building a company, it's about building a brand. And it's something that is really hard to do well. Every brand is unique, and you look at the most successful hardware companies that are coming out now, and they are incredibly strong brands. You look at GoPro, one of the strongest brands in the world. They sell about 65% of their product direct online, which is unprecedented for a brand. And so we spend a lot of time, helping our companies think through the strategy of building a brand, but it's so hard to, here's, follow these 10 steps to be a billion-dollar company. It's like, doesn't really work that way. And so a lot of our help on the retail side is a little bit more tactical, right? So it's like, man, you got this offer from Target to be placed in 2,000 retail stores. This term, and this term are really weird. You should talk to them about it. Or do you realize that this contract requires that you have 50% backstock, which means you have to have 50% more units than are in your PO sitting in a warehouse that you control. A lot of people don't understand that, and so thinking through just sort of the high level stuff about how you maneuver retail distribution is really important. Very few people can help with that. Most investors that you talk to, when you ask them about retail, they're like, oh yeah, I went shopping last week, I know about retail. They've never actually sold product to a major brick and mortar retailer, and just doing it a couple times, you learn a lot. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Cool, awesome.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. Our time is up. Ben, you're amazing. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. You too.
And thank you guys all for coming. See you around the conference.